Hello everybody, this is Manues and welcome back to the second part of the Multifaction cards here on my Eternal set review for Defiance. And as usual, before we continue with the cards, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification icon if you enjoy the content to not miss out on future things. And of course, if you want to help support the free content, there's an easy way to do it. Please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube on your ad block. And now on to the second part of the Multifaction cards. Okay, so first off, we have Burn Them All. This is an interesting alternative to Obliterate. It doesn't have Overwhelm and it deals 1 damage less, but it is fast, which matters. And second of all, unlike Obliterate, which has been changed with the release of Defiance, Burn Them All can hit sites, and 5 is the magic number to kill Howling Peak. Well, I'm not sure how much I like killing Howling Peak this way, investing a card into Howling Peak when they already got usually at least 1 card out of it the turn they played it. It is definitely a solid option. It's better than them getting all the value because you have no other way of dealing with it. And Amplify plays nicely both with potential Westwind Herald in the Ixtun Peaks Herald deck, as well as just giving you a way to generate card advantage. 8 power is not that much for a deck like that. That means you can often shoot 2 things like a unit and a peak, for example. So yeah, all in all, a pretty solid constructed card. Also, the fact that it is primal and fire allows you to put burn in your primal market, for example in Skycrack Aggro. That's another pretty big upside, so keep that in mind. The card is definitely a decent role player in constructed. In limited, this is a great card for obvious reasons. Finisher, card advantage, 8 power is not that much in limited, and also very solid removal, and even 2-for-1 removal. Card is really, really strong. Next we have Howling Peak, one of the best cards, if not the best card coming out of the set. It's a 6-cost site. It has 5 durability, which is a lot for a site, so it doesn't die easy. Even a lot of attacks might end up not being lethal to the peak the first time around against some defense, or if they just have like a medium-sized guy out. And then when you play a unit, it gets +3 health until your next turn, which makes it a lot harder to kill these units, makes it a lot harder to attack the site because your units block so well. Also makes them much better against relic weapons. For example, imagine playing like a Westwind Herald or a Jotun Feastcaller after you played a peak, and then all these Auric Rune Hammers look pretty stupid, unfortunately. So this effect is much better and more impactful than it might seem at first glance, and a lot of the sites just have kind of minor abilities, but this one can be a pretty big game changer. The agenda is also very strong. This is definitely, like, you can kind of divide the sites into sort of sites that are about the guy the site belongs to, or about the agenda and less about the guy that you get out of them. And this is one of the sites that is more about the agenda than about the unit. You get a Caleb's Favor, which is basically drawing you power for free and dealing 2 damage to them, which sometimes even kills a relic weapon or pops a Face Aegis, which can be very good, especially in the Ixtun deck with like Avigraft, where Face Aegis can be very annoying. Then you have Mirror Image, which is pretty strong, lets you copy your best unit, or set up copying a unit on like the 3rd turn by playing it the 2nd and then copying it on the last turn for free, which can be very swingy. And then of course we have Gun Down, which is a very solid removal. The main downside being that it can't kill like the big things that have 6 health, but in a fire-based deck or Skycrack-based deck, there are plenty of ways to help with that. Torch, Rizan, Snowball, that sort of stuff. Even maybe relic weapons. There's a bunch of things that you can combine with this to make it lethal after all against bigger units. And then at the end you get Caleb Reborn, which is obviously kinda late, like a turn 9 Caleb Reborn is not as impressive, and it's only a 4-cost unit out of a 6-cost site, but like I said, this site is more about the value and impact of the agenda than the unit, and the unit is by no means bad, especially for free. It comes into play basically as a 4/7. It has a pretty solid ultimate if you have a bunch of low impact cards, situational cards in your hand, and like the power from the favor and stuff, you can just activate the ultimate and cycle them and draw an additional card in the process, which can be very strong and game-changing in its own right. And then you end up in a spell-heavy deck with a guy that is basically a 4/4 and attacks pretty well by being buffed by your spells. So yeah, incredibly good constructed card and a limited bomb as well, of course. Next we have Clan Huntcaller. It's a 4-cost 4/3 Warcry, and on summon your other units get Warcry this turn. It's not that impressive. Like in constructed, there's just too many better 4-drops, so this is not realistically making it. It's not even a gunslinger, so not a relevant unit type. Warriors are not a tribe that has any support. But in limited, this is still a very good 4-drop. 4-cost 4/3 with Warcry alone is already pretty good, and then getting Warcry on like maybe 2 other units and getting 2 free Warcry triggers, making the next thing you draw bigger, is pretty strong. So this is a great 4-drop in a draft deck that is Stonescar in colors. Next we have Seal, Hand of the Cabal. That's the pledge, double fire, double shadow Stonescar unit. It's a 5-cost 4/5. She is unblockable, so that's pretty decent. The problem I think is in constructed, this doesn't really fit what you would want to be doing in Stonescar, and Stonescar is kind of in a rough spot these days anyway. And in like 3-faction decks that include Stonescar, this also doesn't really seem like what you would care about. But yeah, when Seal hits the enemy player, you get +1 power this turn for each of your units that dealt damage. So yeah, accelerating on turn 6 to 7 power, for example, just doesn't seem that great. And maybe a bit more power if you have other units connecting. And yeah, 5-cost 4/5 unblockable is decent, but not that impressive in constructed. I think she's gonna have a hard time making it in constructed, even though she's not terrible, but she just doesn't bring enough to the table, I think, compared to a lot of other good constructed cards. In limited, however, this is an amazing unit. This is a killer card in limited, so pick it on side. To be fair, I don't know how good Stonescar or Stonescar including color combinations are in limited, since I have not played the new format, so keep that in mind. But aside from the viability of the color combination, this card is very good in limited. Next we have Penitent Bull, the 4-cost 3/2, another Minotaur for the potential Minotaur tribe, but yeah, not likely. Pay 5 and sacrifice Penitent Bull to play 3 random sigils from your deck, so this is some massive ramp, kind of a different take on Minotaur Ambassador, but it's also very slow. You basically spend your entire 4th and 5th turn to basically get a, like, I mean, you get a 3-for-1 because you get 2 sigils for free, sort of, but so do you with Minotaur Ambassador, and Ambassador even gets 2 ready power, so it effectively only costs 4, so you can play something for 1 or 2 the same turn. This is just a pretty bad Minotaur Ambassador, and it could at least be like ready sigils, so it effectively only costs 2 on 5, and you can do something else, but the way it is, this is just really, really bad. In limited, this might be okay. Not very good though, because the 4-cost 3/2 is still pretty bad. And ramping to like 8 or 9 is also usually a bit too much in limited, but with Amplify you can get a bit more use out of it than usual. Next we have Serene Meditant, the double influence pledge card in Combray. It's a 5-cost 4/4 Overwhelm, and on Empower it gets +4/+4 this turn. So yeah, the problem usually is with Empower cards that are this expensive that they are hard to support, and this is kind of a vanilla 5-cost 8/8 realistically most of the time. Sure, Overwhelm was nice, so it cannot be jump blocked and ignored as easily, but it doesn't have any other meaningful abilities. It is not particularly durable. It doesn't have endurance against stun or playing offense defense. It doesn't have lifesteal to make sure you're not getting raised or like make up for being slower than your opponent might be and stuff. It's just a big dumb fatty, and yeah, at that point in the game there are just more powerful things you can do. Like Worldbreaker Behemoth is a 6/7. The turn it comes down, sure, it doesn't attack for 8 next turn, but it still attacks for 6, it generates card advantage, it has Overwhelm, it is monofaction, and it basically blanks any attacks from the opponent the turn it comes down. So yeah, I don't really see this. I mean, sure, you could pair it with like Minotaur Ambassador, which is kind of nice, because then you get to attack for 16 with Overwhelm, but this seems more cool than actually better than what you could do with other cards at that point in the game, so I don't have high hopes for this in Constructed. It just is doing a little too little for too much, basically, and is a bit too one-dimensional for this late of a drop. And yeah, basically mid-rangey decks want more utility, and defense capability, and aggressive decks don't want 5 drops, basically. In Limited, however, this is a very good card, obviously, because a potential 5 cost 8/8 Overwhelm plus the pledge for fixing are amazing. Most legendaries will be good Limited cards at least. Next we have Honeypot, deal 1 damage to an enemy unit plus additional damage equal to the cost of your highest cost relic. So this card's actually pretty cool, since first of all, this color combination doesn't get a whole lot of removal. Second of all, this is a cheap removal, it costs 2, it is fast, and it already deals 3 damage with a Power Stone, which is pretty solid. And if you imagine something like a Mask of Torment or an Eternity Core, this deals 5 damage for 2 power, even to non-attacking units, making this a very solid removal in this color combination that is only caring about the stats of the unit, not the color or anything else. So this is definitely an interesting card to exist, opens up new possibilities. Not sure if there's going to be a deck right away that wants it, but long term I think this card is pretty cool to exist and will matter down the line at some point. And in Limited, if you have enough relics and relic weapons to support this, this is a great addition to your deck. Next we have Torgov's Trading Post, the cheapest site. Unfortunately also a pretty weak site. First off, it has 2 durability, so it is pretty fragile, but it will have run its agenda before something like Heart of the Vault or Rizan happens if you play it on curve, so that is definitely helpful. And at the end of your turn, you discard a random power card from your deck, so it just kind of, yeah, thins your deck out of power, which can be good, but it's a very incremental thing. But it also fills your void for when Torgov shows up, so that's nice, makes it more likely that Torgov is a 7/8 on turn 5, because you get the 3 cards from this, plus like 3 power milled from this, so that's already 6 cards, so you only have to get like 4 other cards in the void, making it very likely that Torgov is basically a 7/8, which is then pretty good. Getting like a free 7/8 on turn 5 is pretty good. The ability also makes Call the Ancients a bit better. The problem is that the agenda is super weak, but this is clearly one of those cards that is basically meant for for the unit, not for the agenda. I have not yet played with the card, and the more I think about it, like, if you fairly reliably get Torgov to a 7/8 when it shows up, this might be better than it seems and than a lot of people think, and I might do some experimentation with this in the future, simply because you have to look at it as a cheap Torgov with upside that has support to be turned on and doesn't cost you as much power. Like, you spend 2 power on turn 2, and then he shows up 1 turn later than normal, but much likely bigger, and you get a little bit of value out of the side on top of it. Not a lot, but some. A lot of the time, I think, on turn 5 at the end of the turn with this trigger, that should often be enough to get your Torgov grown between like Seek Powers and all that other stuff. But yeah, the cards are pretty weak. Call the Ancients has no real impact, it's just a speculative thing, but the ability of the Trading Post shrinking your deck helps a bit, plus the looting from Torgov and the Scout from Ask for Directions. Then Weather the Storm is also quite situational, because a combat trick that you have to play at the beginning of your turn is not that impressive. And yeah, Ask for Directions doesn't even really do anything. But yeah, maybe there's like a Explorer heavy Elysian based deck that this somehow does enough in. I might experiment with it, because the card is kind of interesting, and the cheap side, even if it's not that powerful, might still be worth exploring. So interesting card, but not sure what to do with it and if it's actually going to be good enough. In Limited, however, this I think is still well worth running as usual, because it still generates some value, and Torgoth alone is already a pretty good payoff. And your deck is smaller, so Call the Ancients is better. Scouting has a higher chance of finding you good cards, and the ability has a higher, shrinks your deck by a higher percentage and increases your chance to draw non-power cards more in a smaller deck. Okay, so on to the next card. Great Valley Smuggler. Great Valley Smuggler is one of the better smugglers. I would say the third best. The Argenport and Rakano ones are better, but mainly because they are in better colors. Otherwise, if you can reliably have a relic, a 3-cost 4/4 smuggler is very, very good, and definitely better than the Rakano smuggler, I think, in a lot of cases, and about on par with the Argenport 3/3 lifesteal. So stat-wise, what you get is a really good card. The main problem is that the relic support is going to be a bit tricky, unfortunately. So that's where the issue lies, and that the Elysian black market is not quite as strong, probably, as the Rakano and Argenport markets will be, but it's far from bad. You get cards like Permafrost in there, so you have a cheap removal option and so on. The main problem is that putting in a Permafrost or an Equivocate in your market means you can't, in your black market means you can't run them main, and these colors have very limited like interaction removal options, so you usually want them main, which then means you can't put one in the market, so that's a bit of an awkward thing here. But you can put some relics in your market to self-enable Smuggler, which definitely makes her better. And yeah, once again, not sure if there is a deck right now that wants her, but in theory this is a strong card, and I'm confident she will see play down the line, if only with the next set maybe. We'll see. In Limited, a 3-cost 3/3 is solid, a potential 4/4 even better, and free black market attached even more so, so this will make any deck that can cast it, basically. Then we have Bizarre Stampede. Your units get +1/+1 for each relic you have with a different name. That's such a weird card. Like, first of all, it doesn't get Overwhelm, so it's not that great. The opponent might just jump block the biggest threats and take some damage, not very impressive. Then it's so conditional, like you need probably at least 3 relics for this to be even worth it. 3 different relics, and yeah, this card is just really bad. Even in Limited, I don't think it's very good. So yeah, a shame. But it's kind of flavorful, I guess. Next we have Colossal Pteriax, the Elysian double influence card, basically. The 4/4 flyer with Pledge, and you can pay 3 to give Colossal Pteriax +1/+1. Yeah, not really a constructed card, but a limited bomb. 5-cost 4/4 flyers are already really good in Limited, and then being able to grow it and have Pledge if you have a bad opening hand are amazing upsides. Dinosaur might be a relevant unit type on top of that. Just a very good Limited card. And last but not least for this part, we have Tunneling Gargantua, an 8-cost 5/5, which is pretty expensive. It has Pledge, so that's a really good multi-faction. Expensive multi-faction cards with Pledge is where Pledge matters the most and is the most useful. And then it has Killer, and it gets +X attack and health equal to the cost of your highest cost relic. For example, if you power this out on turn 6 with an Eternity Core, it means this is going to be a 9/9 killer. So it's basically a bit more expensive and bigger predatory Carnosaur with a different unit type. Not being a dinosaur can matter, but usually doesn't in Constructed. So yeah, this is kind of an interesting card. It's a bit slow and a bit expensive, but it's also a fairly versatile, and I would say about on par with the nerfed Carnosaur. It has different up and down sides and adds some flexibility to the deck, so not completely out of the question for Constructed, but yeah, there's not really a deck right now, I think, that wants something like that, but it's a card to keep in the back of your head when you're messing with like relic heavier decks, because yeah, it does some strong stuff and adds some consistency to your deck with the pledge, which is nice. In limited, of course, this is a really good 8-drop. If you want an 8-drop in your deck, this is one of the 8-drops you want. A big killer guy is a very powerful card, even for 8. So pick on sight. Okay, this was the second part of the Multifaction card review. Hope you guys enjoyed it as usual. Let me know in the comments what you think. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on the notification icon if you're new to the channel and enjoy the content to not miss out on future content. Also, hit me up on Twitter, Facebook, and Twitch for more news and updates, and live streaming on Twitch. You can also find my Discord server in the description if you want to join that to hang out with other like-minded folk and yeah, have kind of direct access to me. Yeah, all information as hyperlinks in the description. One last request: if you haven't already, please consider whitelisting EternalTitans.com and YouTube on your ad block to help support the channel and our team website to keep making free content for you guys. That would be much appreciated. Alright, that's it again for this time. This was the Eternal set review for Defiance with the Multifaction cards part 2. I'm your host, Manu S. I thank you for watching, and I see you tomorrow with part 3. Bye!